Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Beyond the Bytes, a show that decodes the trending issues of the region. Access to quality education is every child's right. While the government-run schools are seen as the ones catering to the majority of the masses, private schools too played a crucial role in bringing quality education to the doorsteps of many. However, of late, a number of private schools are seen sporting the elitist or exclusivity tag, going out of the reach of the common masses. Is such an approach required? Is there still room to impart quality education at reasonable fees or rate? Are private schools also right in their bid to go for this transition? Well, to find answers to these questions and much more, we have a selected group of panelists with us today. I have with me Mr. Partha Pratim Phukon, an IIM alumni, an entrepreneur, but today he is here as a concerned parent. Welcome, Mr. Phukon, to Beyond the Bytes. I also have to my left Dr. Sabrina Iqbal Sarkar from the Political Science Department of Cotton University. A very warm welcome to the show, ma'am. To my right, of course, is Mr. Ashutosh Agarwal, founder, Sanskriti Gurukul. Welcome to the show, sir. And I also have with me Mr. Brijesh Singh from Vectors Academy, the founder, CEO of Vectors Academy. A very warm welcome to all of you to this episode of Beyond the Bytes. I'll come straight to you, Mr. Phukon. A whole lot of us have studied in private schools in a very reasonable amount of fees. So what has changed over the years, forcing a lot of private schools to go for a steep hike in fees all of a sudden in the last decade or so?
Before diving directly into the point, I would like to make a couple of submissions. Firstly, I'm in the midst of an August gathering here, who are much more into the subject than I am. So I will not go into the technicalities of school education. I would rather take this opportunity to share my experiences as a village boy. You know, I grew up in the villages. As a village boy, the school education I got in the villages, and what I am today because of that education. So if you permit me, I would say that I grew up in the villages of Mizoram, and in those villages it was definitely not the information age. In fact, electricity itself was a coveted guest till my pre-university days. You know, 15 or 20 days odd, we wouldn't have electricity in the schools. However, the significant thing that I noticed today was every village boy or girl went to school. School was definitely affordable. And what kind of education was imparted then? Well, Mizoram, as it is, as you all know, has a coveted place in the country as the state with the second highest literacy rate. And I myself, fairly successful from that system, have completed my engineering, management, worked in global multinational corporations. Many of my colleagues also carved out niche careers. Now coming to your point, I would rather say that you don't need to pump in a whole lot of money into the system to get out values from that system.
We'll come to a lot of that in course of our discussion. Dr. Iqbal, school fees today has become as high as college fees, engineering colleges fees at almost at par. Right. Is that justified, or I'm sure schools must have their own reasons for that?
Before actually going into answering that question, I think, the issue at hand today, it is not a subject which can have, objective answers. There are many nuances, there are many areas which have to be taken into account before we actually go on to decide or comment whether the fees of the schools are actually reasonable or not. Because if you actually compare the private schools to the government schools, you have to agree that they do provide a lot of other facilities which are not available in government schools. But yes, having said that, I will also say that an extremely extravagant amount of fees, as far as the fact that education is actually a basic right, a fundamental right guaranteed by the Indian Constitution, from that perspective, I do not think that enormous fees without justification cannot be accepted. But yes, having said that, again, I would say that, when they are providing facilities, costs have to be bared as well. So there are two sides to the coin, we cannot come on to an objective answer for this kind of a question.
Well, I'll come to Mr. Ashutosh Agarwal now, the founder of Sanskriti Gurukul. Mr. Agarwal, a lot of people complain that schools are playing the exclusivity card to charge high fees, whereas somebody who's in the helm of affairs, who has been running an institution, how difficult it is to run an institute without charging, because there's so much to look into, there's so much to provide, and that comes at a cost.
Well, Nabarun, your question is very relevant today, in today's times. In fact, I totally agree to what the Dr. Iqbal had said. Schools, when we talk about the exclusivity, what are we talking about? Are we talking about 3 R's? Are we talking about 7 C's? Now, the times have changed. We are moved away from 3 R's and we are into 7 C's. When I talk about 7 C's, I talk about critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, communication, the biggest C in it, character building, citizenship and culture, and connectivity. Now, when we talk about all these, is it being exclusive? I don't think it's being exclusive. This is a demand of the day. Now, when you talk about charging fees on a higher side, or it will also depend upon what are the other facilities the schools are being providing besides the academics. Is the school providing full infra for the sports? Is the school providing full infra for other activities like dance and music and all of that? So, what are the other activities, other infra which is being provided by schools along with academics, along with 3 R's and 7 C's, which is very important to decide upon the fees, quantum of the fees. That is I would like to say here.
Now, Brijesh Singh, despite all that, the beginning of an academic year is becoming nightmarish for the parents because they have to pay a certain amount of fees at one go, and that is again related to the steep rise in fees despite whatever the schools might say. How can that be eased out? You yourself also run an academy, and I'm sure you can throw some light on that.
Okay, I would like to first start with my own opinion about the cost of education nowadays. So yeah, it is costly if you see it as a cost, but truly not. Okay, let's see the problem where it arises from, right? It's not very direct, it's not very straightforward that me speaking here in couple of minutes will explain the actual problem out there. Yeah. So education is actually state responsibility, truly speaking. Private players shouldn't come to education system. Yeah, this is what I truly believe in. Yeah, it's a state responsibility. So whatever you see nowadays, right, in Guwahati or Northeast or rest of the India, it represents a failure of state. And I am very blunt and I am very candid about it. Yeah. Now, what do we mean by failure of state in providing the right?
But that is true across the country. That is true across the country. You just cannot figure out Guwahati or Assam or any part of the region. That's going on across the country. Right. I mean, we are facing this situation across the country, and it has been there. It has been there since decade. It has been there since post-independence. I mean, the last 2 generations, a lot of us and even our parents have studied in private schools. Of course, I'm not contending your statement. Please go ahead.
Wonderful. I think you're supporting me in that way. So moving ahead, what happens that since it's a state's responsibility, so you are supposed to provide the updated education which is required for the new generation today. You're feeling into that. 20 years back when we were in schools, I was in KV, I used to pay 5 rupees a month. Come on. Do you expect that my kid is going to pay 5 rupees a month tomorrow? No. Right? That is not going to happen. Don't attach the cost as a cost, but consider that as an investment. Now, there comes a reasonable pricing to the education. There comes a reasonable fee charging in the whole system. I don't think any school out there in Northeast is unreasonable when they charge their fee. They do explain why they are charging that fee. If they are not, they are unable to explain, yeah, it's a cost. If they are able to explain, it's an investment.
So it's an investment, yes.
I would like to say something, actually I do not agree with you. Very respectfully, of course. My first query is that when you say it is a failure of the state, I understand that, right to education is a basic fundamental right. Agreed, absolutely. But you have to take into account, the size of India and the number of population we have. Okay, it is a Herculean task on the part of the government. So having said that it is a failure of the state is a very sweeping statement at one go, because the state has done what it can do. it is providing free education in the government schools, all right? But it's like, and if you say that the state should take complete responsibility for education, it will be like biting off more than it can chew, because it will not be able to do justice, all right? Because we are not like Scandinavian countries where the population is less, infrastructure is good, and having said that, you said that you cannot say that it's a cost. You will consider it an investment. You have to take into account that we are a country where a substantial part of the population is below the poverty line. They are not in the best case scenario to make such an investment. All right. In that case, you have to see that the private schools, why did the private sector come? To kind of ease the load of the public sector, right? So if the private sector goes, by leaps and bounds to increase fees, and when you say that, that no school in the Northeast is charging extravagant fees, I absolutely disagree. Why? Because, I have a lot of friends, I have cousins who are married, who have kids, and I hear from them that before planning a child, they actually take into account whether they can afford the education of a child.
Absolutely.
Because it is extremely costly.
The dilemma of a modern parent.
Yeah, exactly.
And can we afford to look at it as an investment?
If you're talking about economics, let's address it from an economic standpoint for a moment, and let's remember the boss of economics, Dr. Adam Smith himself, is the law of demand. Now, as my friend said, that the government institutions could not address the humongous need, which is why the private sector came in. You see this with any industry. Do we remember the good old post office? The post office system failed us in a way, which is why the courier service, the private courier services came into being. Do we remember the ASTC buses? A lot of frills, private buses came in with all those video coaches and stuff like that. Here again, the government, as ma'am says, that we are a huge country, which is why the government itself cannot address this problem. Private sector is definitely welcome to address this. Also, there are definitely costs involved in imparting such education. Now, it is open for debate today. How much should be that cost? That is a question.
So there's an allegation that education has turned into a business, probably at the college level, probably it has, but let's not get into that. We're discussing school education here. Now it is being alleged that even school education is slowly but surely turning into a business. How would you respond to that?
School education to business, I will not agree to that, first of all. See, there are schools in India where the teacher-student ratio is 1:8, 1:9, compared to a general ratio of 1:30. Now, if there is a school of 1:8, do you expect them to charge a fees of 1:30? It's not possible. There are schools, similar schools, they have a student ratio in a section is about 25, instead of the typical 40-45 students in a section. The basic arithmetic comes into play here. So, what I feel, I again repeat my previous point, is that we have to see the kind of facilities, the kind of infra, the kind of strength the school is giving, along with the kind of faculty which it is giving. But saying all that, is it not possible to have an affordable education? It is possible to have an affordable education with committed management and equally committed faculty. You don't need a fancy infra for a quality education.
But are we seeing that? Are we seeing that? Is the management interested in and committed would be the word, as Mr. Agarwal just said, to provide that quality within as low rate as possible? Do we see that intent, or is it like, if you can afford, we are providing these, you are free to take it, we are justifying it, whatever you are providing, we are justifying it, but if you can afford, come and take it, we are not too interested in mix mashing it and trying to fit into your needs or the needs of the general masses. Is that the trend that we are seeing?
Oh, okay, I think the whole perspective, the way we are looking at it as a cost, is wrong. This is my opinion about it. Yeah, let me put it this way. Let me continue from where I left, right? Okay, now this was a state responsibility. We couldn't do it, right? We as a citizen, we couldn't do it. We have to, yeah.
I like to butt in here. Delhi government is doing a wonderful job as far as Delhi government schools are concerned. 24% of the budget allocation is for education there. Why can't we replicate it across the country? Why is the standard of our Assam government schools?
But then again,
I think that is a different perspective, because it comes on to the ruling party in power, you know,
again, see, okay, fine.
I mean,
Even
nothing is straightforward.
if we take it, okay, education is state responsibility. Nobody is denying that. But just because the state cannot fulfill its responsibility fully, does it give the private players a license to do whatever they want to do?
Exactly.
That is the bigger question.
I'm coming to that
Yeah.
only. Actually, once I'll finish, I think I'll be able to answer the questions and apprehensions going around it. Yeah, what is my stand about it? Yeah. So moving ahead, what happens when you are unable to do it? You allow private players to come in. You have to. You have no other choice, because society has to grow. We have to fight with other countries to compete in science, to compete in technology, to compete in commerce, to compete in any area for that matter, arts, or take whatever, sports. Yeah, schooling is not only about science; it's about sports also.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So moving ahead, what happens that when you allow private players to come in, they come with an economic interest. If you debar that, what do you expect from that? They are not state. You don't pay them salary every month. They have to make their budget, their own budget. They have to run the show, and they have to fulfill their promises. If they stop fulfilling their promises, like the states are doing around the country, right? If you go to the villages, you'll see the pathetic situation of education out there, independent of the state. I come from UP. I know the situation in UP. I have seen that in my village. I have traveled the entire northeast without any exaggeration. I have traveled almost every district of Assam. I have went to the private government colleges of Assam, junior colleges of Assam. I have seen the situation there. It's no different from rest of India.
Yes.
Let me finish it this way. So if you allow private players to come in, let them compete in their own way, right? Now, you're not forcing, your state is not coming here and asking guardians and students, please go to this academy, or please go to this school, or please go to this school. They're not giving a list of schools with the ranking and all, right? It's open for everyone. It's an offering. I mean, this whole debate has to start with that.
We'll come to that. We have to take a very short break. This discussion is now getting interesting, but a very short break. We come back within seconds. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching Beyond the Bytes, where we are debating the rise in fees in private schools today, how far it is justified, can education be a business? Well, before going to the break, Brijesh here just said when private players come, they come with an economic interest. You have to allow them that room. But does this mean that education can be seen as a business? Can we afford to see education as a business? Dr. Iqbal.
A plain and simple answer to that question is no. We cannot see education as a business, because it is about the future of the children who are the future of the country. Very simple answer to that question. But, you know, having given the facts that Mr. Brijesh mentioned, you know, I would like to point some highlights which I think are important. And no offense, but I think the way he has portrayed the issue is an oversimplification of the entire problem at hand. You know, firstly, I will tell you, you have to take into account the fact that India is a post-colonial state. We are still in the nation-building process, all right? Plus, it's a multi-party country, you know, the politics is there in everything. And when you said that, you know, the public sector, you know, they don't pay a salary to the private sector, but you have to understand that the private sector pays revenue to the public sector. The government is getting revenue, you know. So it's not as simple as it appears, you know. And secondly, I would like to say that, you know, when we take into account the increasing fees of schools nowadays, I think there are two perspectives to this, you know. First, like Mr. Agarwal had said, that we have to actually take into account what are the facilities being given to the children. You know, because when you are giving a number of facilities, I have to agree, I cannot disagree here, that there are a number of facilities being given to children. For example, like, you know, there's horse riding, there's swimming, there are music classes, you know, and these incur cost, you know. So they have to take money so that they can pay the people who are coming in for these particular jobs, right? This picture is definitely there. But again, you have to take into account that we are a developing country. So we cannot cross a watermark. You know, when it comes to fees.
Brijesh, respond to that.
Definitely I respond to that. No, that watermark is not regulated, ma'am, unfortunately.
Yes, I understand, but you know, it's a matter of, I think it'll come on humanitarian grounds.
No, it's not very straightforward, ma'am. We can debate anything out here. When we go back to our AC rooms, we speak different. Let me put it this way. Let me be more original here while speaking my heart, right? I come from IIT background. Yeah, I'm graduated from IIT, and I wanted to do something to basic education. What I mean by basic education is like up to 12th. It's pathetic situation in India up to 12th. Beyond that, believe me, engineering, medical, everything is pretty much sorted here. We know what to do next. There are IIMs, there are IITs, there are multiple engineering colleges, private engineering colleges, multiple, you know, other colleges, arts, sports, everything sorted. More or less it's sorted. What do you mean by when you say education? Teachers? Yeah?
No, education is learning.
I mean, the first point of contact is teacher, right? The person who is going to impart it. I mean, I'm asking this question to every
No, I
teacher,
think it
right?
comes from substance first. You know, it is substance. When you ask me what is education, I think the first answer to that will be it's process of learning, you know.
I mean, this could be another debate then.
But again, you know, private players coming in, they cannot have the license just because they have to take care of the economic
They haven't
interest.
got the license.
Yeah.
They don't have the
And
license.
They haven't
They need
got
to
the license
sustain.
to do
What is
anything.
happening
The
here?
private player
think-
has to sustain itself.
I think we need.
Let me put it this
I
way.
think we need to understand, you know, that when we are talking about such an issue, which is monetary, we have to be practical. You know, we have to be practical. We have to take into account the facts which are on the ground, the reality. Because when you talk about opinion, but I'm sorry, opinions don't matter. We have to take into account facts here. We're talking about the future of our children. We're talking about money. We're talking about the jobs they'll have by which they'll feed their families.
So the private players would say they are being practical, they are providing these facilities.
And
if you can afford it, take
yeah,
it. If you
yeah.
cannot afford it, somebody else will take it.
You know,
so
I
they are
wanna-
being practical in their own ways.
You know, and one more thing I would like to say, Navarun, that, you know, when you say that the private players will justify, of course you'll justify. You're taking money, you will justify. No offense to that, but we all justify. When it comes to anything that we're doing, we will justify because we don't want to look like, you know, we are taking more than our fair share.
Oh, I mean, this is completely different. I mean, I think we should be careful about while using the words and adjectives out here. Fair share, a very sweeping line, ma'am. No, I mean, you can decide your own, right? It's not a state run. Okay, let me put it this way again. When we speak about the cost, right? There is Doon school. We all know that, right? It's from ages.
Absolutely.
I mean, we were born like in 80s, and we know that, right? And my father couldn't afford it. I wanted to go for it, right? I went through the KV education system, the central government funded institute, mostly subsidized, yeah, and I did fairly good in my career. That doesn't mean the people who can afford it, they shouldn't go for it. They are going from ages in those schools. What I'm trying to tell you is this is a developing country. This debate has to have some data before
That's what
we
I
speak
said.
about
It's a
it.
developing country.
Yeah, it's a developing country. So there will be Section 9 society of people who can afford it. You cannot debar
Absolutely.
that.
Nobody is questioning why
it's not costly.
somebody should go to an Assam Valley or a Doon school. Nobody's
Yeah.
even questioning that. The question, Mr. Phukan, here is that increasingly, even we studied in private schools, it was quite affordable even during those days.
Exactly.
Why all of a sudden we have a certain section of schools coming up and others, the risk here, the worrying sign here is that others may soon follow suit. We have a certain so-called model schools where somebody is trying to build up an infrastructure, nothing wrong with it. They're trying to give their best, but there is this tendency to follow suit, and then we may have a new model where a whole lot of schools are into that trend, which puts the risk of the commoners getting deprived of getting access to that quality education, which happened probably a decade or two ago.
Now that I'm given
And of
the
course, I'm
opportunity
sure
again,
Mr. Agarwal will pitch in. Yeah.
Now that I'm given the opportunity again after a long hiatus, let me try to bring the focus back on the topic at hand. The topic at hand today is the good quality education is becoming unaffordable, and is it going beyond the reach of the common man? Now, let me try to define good quality education. What is good quality education? In my view, simply, it is the capability to become economically productive. The capability of the student to finally become economically productive. Also, to develop a sustainable livelihood later after he or she passes out from the education system. And thirdly, to enhance his well-being and whereby the well-being of the nation. So this is what.
Yes, that's technically, but the first thing is to give education. The first thing should be to give education. Yes.
Now, how do we impart this quality education? What are the ingredients of this quality education? I think the biggest ingredient of this quality education is to teach the child values.
Yeah.
Teach the child values, and with those values, he is empowered to take on the world confidently, to mold him to become a confident global citizen.
Yes. So
now, is this something that money can buy? Is this something where you need to pump in a whole lot of money to do that?
But then again, sorry to cut you short, Mr. Agarwal, even to impart values, the students-teacher ratio that has to be brought down so there is more interaction, and it's a fruitful interaction. If the ratio is 1:100, 1:80, doesn't it get difficult? And you know, that's where probably the private schools are fitting in. They would say
that's where the issue comes in. No. If a school is having 1:80, I don't see 1:80, maybe 1:60. I have heard about schools in the city.
We have had 1:60.
We have 1:60.
I mean, we have had plenty of them. So
well, I'm a parent of such a school.
So
anyway, we're not taking any names here.
But yes. So as you rightly said, the student class ratio has to come down. You know, it has to be a student strength is 25, 26, max 30 is a very good strength for class to impart all the C's which I have been mentioning about. Now, when we bring that ratio down, the costs naturally go up. When you're comparing from 1:80 to 1:30, the costs immediately go up. As simple as. So, I always say the school has to sustain itself. The private players have to sustain themselves. It's not the question of making profit. Profit doesn't come into picture here. The issue is sustainability of the.
Would you agree with that, Brijesh? Would you agree with that? Profit doesn't come into question.
No.
That's a.
I completely disagree with this. Let me put it this way again. Yeah. We can say anything here for the sake of saying, but I'll always be what I do back home when I go to my office. So let me put it this way again. I'll start from where I left. Yeah. I'll continue with my speech. Sorry. So okay, I was there. The most important and integral part of any school is teacher, because he or she is going to impart the teaching, right? Students look at teacher like an idol. They want to become like them someday. They want to think like that teacher, right? Now the pathetic situation which we have in schools, let me put it this way. Say, because I belong to a science background, I understand science really well. I have traveled the globe. I have seen the world. I have seen different education system of Europe and US. I have seen Assam. I have seen UP. I have seen India. I live in Bangalore also. I go to Bangalore also. Moving ahead, when I wanted to impart science education as a junior college like Vectors Academy, I was wondering, okay, look, NCERT is there. It's a beautiful book. Believe me, the way they have written everything in that book is beautiful. And if you go to the preface page, you'll find that IIT and ISC professors are there, and they are the brain behind it. Nobody can question NCERT. How many teachers do we have in our schools who actually understand that book first? When we speak about quality education, we speak about this. I had this dilemma when I wanted to start Vectors Academy. No, I end up with hiring IITians to take classes. Those IITians.
So whose failure is that? Do you mean to say our entire education system has failed over the years?
I mean, that's something I believe that still state has to play a big part. Let me complete it, then you'll understand. Now, if you hire an IITian, right, you have to pay extra package to them. You understand that. Everyone knows that. They are not free. They are not affordable in the same cost where you get a
teacher is free. Whether IITian or not, no teacher is free.
Ma'am, there's no doubt about it.
Let me just, butt in here. I would like to tell you that, the basic qualification for a teacher is either masters, with qualifying examinations. I myself am a PhD, all right. So, of course, that did not come out of thin air. I have worked my, I've put in my hard work,
But then,
I think, when you classify teachers into IITs and stuff, I think that's a very elitist approach.
Teacher, number one. Let us also.
That's a very elitist approach.
I think you have to let me complete before you put words in my mouth.
When you are constantly making statements
I'm extremely
which are not
sorry.
acceptable.
I cannot be part of this debate if it's going to be like this.
no, see.
I didn't interfere with anyone.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, moving ahead. Now, since you want to impart physics, chemistry, maths, and biology, right? And why do you want to impart physics, chemistry, maths? Because you want your kid to become good in science and someday go to IIT or good engineering college and further pursue the MS or PhD or get into the academics and choose the career the way that kid want to be, right? So you have to teach the right subject. Unfortunately, there's no sweeping comment. I'm very specific about it. We can have backdoor talk about it, and we can actually rationalize it and prove it with data that the pathetic situation of teachers still exists.
But then,
you know,
I want to raise a point here. The pathetic situation of teacher which you say was maybe 2 decades back or
Exactly.
a decade back. It's
Exactly.
not that now. It's not.
I don't agree with
exactly.
that.
Now looking for a teacher's job, I get girls from corporates looking for a teacher's job.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
I got
Wonderful.
see, it's again.
I would
yeah.
like to make a very valid point in here. Today in the Assam Tribune, there's a very big article which is talking about, the number of posts lying vacant in colleges, government colleges, all right? So many, hundreds and hundreds of posts are lying vacant in government colleges, all right? So, I think when we talk about this problem at hand, it is not something that we can interpret unilinearly, all right? You have to take into account so many layers to the problem, and when I talk about the vacant post in the colleges, what I mean to say is that now most of the colleges, even schools for that matter, what they do, they hire contractual faculty, all right, or ad hoc teachers, okay? They are exploited, all right? No, I mean no
Absolutely,
offense
it
to
all
anyone,
comes
but
back
yes,
to economics.
Yes, it comes
It all
back
comes
to
back to
economics,
economics.
and let me just put it very blatantly out there, we are saying here on the show that education is not a business, but 80% of the people who are in the profession will consider it as a business, all right? That is the reason why there are increasing number of school fees. There are very few people here, very few people who are actually echelons of education. And that is why, like I had said in one of the previous shows, I have a serious problem with the term edupreneur.
I might just stand with Brijesh when he says that everybody has to take care of their economic interests.
Yes.
But again, who draws the line? Who draws the line and where to draw the line? Who decides that, Mr. Agarwal? And I'll come back to you.
It has to be decided by both the school and the parents. It's a school cannot exist without the parents, without the students. The students cannot do without the school. Now, what I personally say is, the issue comes up every year during the admission time is the increase of fees by the schools. I'm not talking about new
Yes,
school coming
yes,
up.
yes.
I'm talking about the increase of
Yes,
fees coming
that
up.
is a very relevant
Okay.
point.
Now, what I always say to my management is the school fees should be tagged to the inflation rate of the country. That's it. Inflation rate is there. Please, that inflation rate is 5%, 6%. That has to be
Taken care
increased.
of.
But you can't if it's a 4% or 5% inflation rate, you can't ask for a 20% increase of fees.
Yes.
So that is where the school has to think and draw the
Yes,
line.
yes.
The drawing of the line will depend upon the sustainability of the school
Yes,
ultimately.
agreed.
And yes, nobody can grudge increase of fees by the inflation rate or tag to the inflation rate plus minus 2%.
So basically schools have to be sensible. They are the ones who should draw the line, probably consult with parents and know where to stop. I'll come back to Brijesh just after this very short break. Welcome back. You're watching Beyond the Bytes. Brijesh, but then does that happen? What stops a school from going beyond that? What stops a school from probably, if the inflation is 6%, what stops a school from hiking a fees by 10% yearly? I mean, is it possible? Because there are always takers in a country of over a billion. There are takers. There are takers. There are takers of anything. We have enough people who can afford, to pursue, to give that much, to shell out that much. So what stops that? Of course, you can say the government can have some regulations, but we have regulations in other parts of the country. Assam is yet to have. It has been recently tabled in the assembly. Soon it will come out. But we have regulations in Karnataka. We have regulations in Maharashtra. But nothing much is happening. So what is the way out for that?
Oh, this is very unfortunate situation. I'll finish the previous, maybe you can call it a speech. Yeah, let me finish. Then I'll definitely answer this question. Moving ahead, ma'am, what happens that when you have this infrastructure, yeah, you have to bear the cost of the same. That naturally, inherently increases the cost of education. Now, these schools which are charging substantially higher cost, in your words, they don't tell you that everyone is invited. We want to cater a certain section of society. We want to solve their problem, right? We have certain seats for certain section of society who cannot afford it.
Is it not against the inclusive nature of education?
It's exactly against the inclusive nature of education. What can you do about it?
What can we do about it?
It is getting
that is the
commoditized.
question I ask.
It's
What
becoming a
can we do
commodity.
about it?
Education is
Yeah.
it is supposed to be a service. It's becoming a commodity.
Absolutely.
If you go to some developed countries who have figured out the education system, you would notice one thing, is that up to the primary and middle school level, you have no choice of school. You have to go to your neighborhood school, which means what? Which means that the school system has been standardized.
Yes.
It has been standardized, and the education they partake are more or less the same in every school. We need to bring in that kind of standardization in our schools, in our system here. And how do we need to do it? We need to bring in reforms. Educational reforms are the only answer to that.
Agree.
Yeah?
Do we? Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. And to bring in educational reforms, three ingredients are very visible now. First of all, the policies and programs. What exactly our country needs. We are over 1 billion people. This is often repeated. What exactly our country needs. So bring in those kind of reforms. Secondly, put in those trained people who will carry out those reforms. And thirdly, you definitely need the political will. The executive will to do that. I think this is the answer to, the way ahead, the road ahead for us. Because if we look at a country like Sweden, it begs an answer as to why they keep producing Nobel laureates, one after the other, one after the other. And we, a country of 1 billion people, have been able to do much on that. So can we have a pilot project? Okay, we keep talking about our 1 billion people. Let's go into one particular state, one particular district or one state and do a pilot project, as in
A start needs to be made somewhere. Coming back to you, Mr. Agarwal. Schools often talk about what they have to offer, what they are offering to the students, for which they are taking the fees, the money. Who decides what the children need? My child might not need a piano class, a horse riding class, a swimming class. I just want him to learn physics, chemistry, maths, English, sociology, history, and I am done. He doesn't need to learn French, he doesn't need to learn German, he doesn't need to know Chinese. Who decides on that? And is it not steadily becoming like selling packages?
No, I beg to differ here. Every parent would like the child to have a sport. Every parent would like the child to learn music or dance or one of those cultural activities. No, I don't accept that there will be parents who don't want, who only want the 3 hours. If we are looking only at the 3 hours, sorry, we are going back to a prehistoric age or whatever. We need to look forward. If we are looking forward, if we want to be a superpower, India wants to be a superpower, they have to talk about 7 Cs. We can't just talk about 3 hours. 3 hours have been taken care of by the mobile phone. In 1994, when the mobile had come to Guwahati, within 6 years, I could see a rickshawala using a mobile phone, using numeracy, using a literacy and everything. So we should not talk about 3 hours today.
I would like to say something. You know, I think a very general and a very broad answer to the question at hand will be the idea that we cannot have an elitist approach to education. You know, when somebody had just questioned, I think, who raised the point that what is the purpose of education? You know, it is actually to end stratification. It is actually to unify society. And if we have an approach which further gives rise to more stratification in an already stratified society like India, I'm sorry, but education is not doing its job. You know, we have to understand that we are actually into education. We are sending our children to school so that they learn to accept people, acknowledge people, irrespective of differences. And I would like to make a very important point here. You know what? I have seen that when there are people from particular institutions, they develop this air, you know, costly institutions, they develop this air that they are from a superior school, you know, because they are paying so much for it. This is there. You know, and there is this elitist culture which is coming from elitist institutions. The purpose of education in itself is being defeated. We cannot have that. You know, we need to take education for what it is, to enlighten us. To enlighten us, to teach us to think. You know,
can we afford?
I'll support her in that. There is absolutely no doubt about it. This is what we think. Yeah, when I say we all citizen of India.
But is that what we are going to do?
No, let me tell you, there's a reason behind it. It's not that straightforward. We cannot blame anyone for that. Tomorrow you'll become son, you'll have a son, then you'll also think that way. You want to send your son in the best school possible in Guwahati, right? You will not compromise with that, believe me. Okay, moving ahead. What happens that if you go 20, 30 years back, when we were in school 20 years back, right, or when we were kids, the career choices which we had at that time, that required certain skill. The teachers were sufficient at that time. The knowledge which they had about the career approach and everything, the teaching the methodology which they had, that was sufficient. The way we are growing, the way the aspiration is growing among youth in India, you understand? That it's breaking all the walls. Unfortunately, the teachers of this country are not prepared to accept it. They have to evolve first before you question all these things. The teachers who understand this, believe me, the teacher who understand this and they are skilled to impart that education, they are costly.
How is that acceptable? I'm sorry, but
I
I'm
don't
a
agree
teacher
to you,
myself
Mr.
standing
Vinesh. I don't
here.
agree to you.
You know,
They are costly.
absolutely.
No,
You know, I am a
teachers
teacher standing
See,
myself
first of
here.
all,
and I
anything
strongly
here,
oppose
this
to
is
that
the reality.
statement.
This is the reality.
Teachers are evolving. They are evolving on daily basis. Like I said, it has to be committed faculty.
My dear sir, they are evolving very slow.
No, it depends upon the.
What Brijesh is making a point here.
You know,
for
you
a committed
cannot-
faculty comes at a price.
They are evolving very slow. Come on.
You cannot kind of corner a problem that this is a problem in the
Ma'am,
entire issue.
I haven't seen a single change in my school education when I go to my village from last
That
20
may
years.
be, that
Can
may
you
be a
explain
case
that?
in- That may,
So-
that may be a
so-
case in your particular context.
No, I'm talking about Assam.
Yeah, that may
No,
be.
and
That's what
I
I'm
have
saying.
travelled
It may
Assam.
be a
It's the
case in a
same.
particular context. We
No, it's
cannot.
not particular
Like
context. I'm
sir
telling
had
you
said
in
before some
general.
time that the government schools of Delhi this time they had
Yeah,
outstanding
yeah,
results
yeah.
because they had a very devoted advisor who ironically was removed by the government.
Yeah.
You know, and some religious person has been put in that place. So, you know, like I'm saying, we need to broaden our perspective to understanding the problem at hand. It is not something which, this is these are the issues at hand. This is the reason.
again-
why-
I was reading something today. In Secunderabad, they have come up with the concept of affordable private schools.
right.
Okay, but sadly, what is happening? They also mentioned that affordable private schools are an answer to the children from the slum dwellers, slum dwellers. But sadly, the quality lacks there, because the kind of teachers they have there will not be the kind of teachers which are available in the typical private schools. But yes, affordable private schools have come up in the country. I would also like to add something here is a PPP model should be looked after for education,
Yes.
because ultimately the government schools have so much of infra, so much of facilities, land area is there. Why not develop the government schools?
But again,
Yes.
again, coming back to the
I would
point.
like to finish. I would like to finish.
Yeah, but before that I have a question.
please.
Again, coming back to the point that you made that, for an institute, to get the best teachers, you have to get the best people, probably from IITs, probably from some premier institutes. Well, then 10 institutes like yours might be hankering after those same people from the IITs, which means they become more costly, which means in turn, the 10 institutes which are hankering from them become more costly. So aren't we getting into a rat race?
We are not. Let me put it this way. Our Prime Minister vision, right? Our Prime Minister is the person who have rolled out a scheme for medical insurance. Atal Medical, I don't remember the name exactly.
Atal Amrit Abhiyan.
Please pardon me for that. Moving ahead, and in the parallel, he is launching a bullet train. What I'm trying to tell you is this: don't attach the cost to education as a barrier. There are different societies, there are different group of students, their aspirations are different. You cater the need of that section. I have chosen a section, you choose a section. You cannot aggregate the whole problem all the time. If you aggregate the problem, I'll tell you in 20 years nothing has changed. With the traditional values which we are imparting to students in the form of, look guys, this is how school education should be, right? From last 20, 30 years we are following the same pattern of teaching. There is a bell, there is a chutti, there is all those things. There is a games period, there is a library period.
Nobody is denying that. The only point we are trying to make here, or probably the panelists, half of the panelists are trying to make here, is that nobody is denying the economic rights of the private players, but only that education cannot be business.
Exactly.
That's the.
Oh, tell me now, why do you see business as a negative thing? We are surviving because of that. We are growing because of that.
Because the way we are used to see business is, you strive for more profit.
We were wrong. We were wrong. We
I'm
were
sorry,
wrong.
but
Business
that
is
is
not like
complete-
that. Okay, come on.
No,
Let
no,
me
that
put it
is-
this way.
that is-
Government itself is a business, a big business out there. They
How
collect
can-
taxes, they give salary.
This is
That
a basic
business.
understanding. I'm sorry. Business comes from capitalism. What is the sole motive of capitalism?
No, no, no.
Profit.
Why do you see capitalism as a problem?
Oh my God. We have serious issues here.
We have
Really?
serious issues here.
Oh my God.
I don't
okay.
see capitalism as a problem.
Because
Okay.
business,
You don't see
Brijesh,
capitalism as a
business-
problem because you have a particular standard of
business-
living.
business-
That is why.
You don't know
Schools are-
about me. Don't comment on me.
Business.
You know
Brijesh,
nothing about me, man.
Business Brijesh is because it's seen in this country or elsewhere in the globe as something which you should strive year after year, quarter after quarter to increase profit. Probably we should not and we cannot look at education in that
Schools or
way. That's
education
what-
cannot
that's
be
what
looked
the
as a
point-
profit
that's
center.
the point
Now
we're
let
trying
me
to
put a
make here.
different perspective.
Navarone, I think we are totally diverting from the topic at hand. And I think in this context, I have to bring focus back on the issue. I would like to point out one thing, that, we are proceeding ahead with the general assumption that government schools are bad. And
No,
private
no.
schools, no. Generally, people tend to believe that I will not send my ward to a government school because private schools are better. But, we cannot compartmentalize that, private schools are not always good and government schools are always bad.
Ma'am-
I mean to say that they are not up to the mark. So actually we have to get rid of some prior inhibitions, assumptions, and widen our worldviews to accept, what is the issue exactly. And like I said, nobody is talking about, profit. Of course, you'll make profit when you have started an institution.
You have to.
But
You have
it
to. You
has
have to- you have
be
to
a
sustain.
reasonable
It cannot be a profit
Uh,
center.
let-
It
let-
cannot
let-
be a
let-
profit
let-
center.
Profit-centric.
Exactly.
Profit
It
should
has
not
to
be
be
the
a
only.
It cannot be a
no,
profit
let,
center.
let me
It
put
has
it
to
this
be a
way. I
reasonable
think
profit.
I support you in that. But how do you see it? I believe that government institutes are better than private institutes today. IITs are government, centrally funded.
That's
Okay, let me go
Yeah.
back. Let me go a step further down, right? There are private institutes, more private institutes in Assam than government institutes. Please count the government institutes. They are better than private institutes when it comes to quality education and the people who are more successful from that college. On an aggregate, we are not questioning that. We are questioning the whole education system as a whole. Whether there should be a cost attached to it, whether that cost is reasonable or not, that is a debate. What I was telling you is this: don't treat business and capitalism as a wrong thing, right? Business aspect will be there. The teacher who is going to teach, the sweeper who is going to sweep, the person who is going to garden the lawn, they are to be paid. And the guy who is running, a manager who is running the whole show, that person need to make money.
Yes, but it should not be profit driven, right? I want the.
What do you mean by profit driven?
I would tend to agree with you, Brijesh, at this point. Yes, private sector has come in, and private sector's sole motive is definitely not profit. There are many private sector organizations who are social in nature, charitable in nature. So we should have horses for courses. People who want to get into the education system should be allowed to get in. There should be some kind of filtration process, and private sector should definitely be allowed to make some profit, because we are in that kind of a capitalist society. However, as I mentioned earlier, we need regulation.
True.
Self-regulation is not going to work. We need a regulator saying that this is the upper limit for fees.
But
I
that
think-
regulation, yeah.
I think that this is where the state can come in. The state can have certain guidelines that, the fees has to be within this particular limit. In that way, the state can maybe play a greater role in education and in the educational infrastructure for a country like India. Because let's be practical, the state cannot take up the entire responsibility for
But
imparting
again,
education for the
Brijesh,
entire population.
having regulations in place, having a cap in place, do you think it will do more harm than good at times? When you look at it in a way where you are somebody who wants to impart quality education, wants to give the best, so you're getting the best people, you're paying them the best, suddenly there's a regulation and then you don't know how to sustain your school, and then a good school is shut.
True.
If you're an honest man trying to do your things honestly, so is regulation the solution at all?
Regulation has to be realistic. They have to look at a lot of factors into that. It
Yes.
it can't be something which Gujarat came up 2 years back, that the fee should be 25,000 per year. That's it. No, it cannot be that.
In a way, you let the market self-regulate the whole system. But
Yeah.
this is a social sector. This is not like the stock market.
Yeah.
Yes,
There
we
has to
cannot
be some kind
we
of
cannot go
regulation.
back to laissez-faire. We cannot go back to laissez-faire. All right, we have to take into account that,
The
like I've been
problem-
repeating, we are a developing
I
state.
think I have to
And
interfere
one
now.
more thing, it
I
just
don't
comes
get
to
the
my
chance
mind right
otherwise.
now that, say for example, a child, in 11 and 12, he wants to do a particular course, which is not available in the government schools, all right? and he wants to go to a private institution to do that, but of course the fee structure is extravagant and he can't afford it. What happens then? And I have massive problems with the idea that education caters to some sections of the society. I will not accept that, because right to education is a fundamental right. You know, it's a fundamental right. It is a part of Article 21, which comes to right to life and personal dignity. I will not accept that education is for particular sections of society. What do you mean by that? You are dehumanizing the other parts of the society. You are actually saying that they are less human, they cannot afford. That's not our problem.
Brijesh, respond to that.
Yes, I'll respond to that.
We are running out of time very quickly.
First, I would like to tell you one thing. Don't make it personal. Second, don't judge on me. Third, don't judge on my statements. And let me put forward my view over it.
No, nobody's making it personal here. We
Exactly.
can go ahead.
Okay.
I don't know what your problem
Your tone and texture was kind of into that
You know,
line.
when it's a debate, when
Let's
it's
make
a
it clear.
debate,
Nobody's getting personal here. So we can
Nothing
go ahead.
personal.
Yes,
You
we are running out of time. Brijesh, very
Let
quickly.
me summarize it this way.
Yeah.
Nobody is making
funny.
education as a commodity, right? If I simplify it like this, education is a service. As a private player, you chose to provide that service. As a private player, you found there are some fundamental problems with the existing current education system. You came as a private player. You came with a business interest. There's no denying fact about it. Let me put
Mr.
it this
Agarwal
way.
here doesn't agree.
No, no,
Anyway.
I'll come to that part. You came with a business interest. Why do we feel that business is wrong? Come on, this new channel is a
It's
business.
not the question. Business is wrong.
You have to pay salary.
You can't come into education with a business interest.
Business-
That's what I want to say.
Exactly.
No, let me.
Exactly.
You're not
Private
coming here with
players-
profit
No,
motive.
sir.
No.
No, sir. You can deny anything. I'm telling the truth. Okay, you
I-
came
I-
as a
I-
private
you know,
player.
you can't
You
have-
wanted to compete with other private players. Let me conclude it. Then you can say anything about it.
You can't have a
Yeah,
debate.
this is my
and
closing remark.
you-
If I can put forward.
you can't have a debate by
No, I cannot. I can
outrightly
understand.
dismissing other people's statements.
No, you are being judgmental. You are not.
I'm sorry,
so-
but I
so-
will.
so-
I will
so-
say
what
that
can I
as a
say about
personal
it?
comment.
We-
You know, you
we-
are.
No, no, I am
Naval,
not.
I have
No,
to
no,
say
no,
this.
I have to complete it.
You are
Otherwise,
saying
people
don't make
will take a
personal
different
comments on
opinion
me. You
about
are
it.
making
Okay.
personal comments on
Okay.
me.
Okay.
You know.
No,
Okay.
ma'am.
Please mind your
Let me
language,
finish
Mr.
it this
Brijesh.
way.
Okay. Let's
Yeah,
wrap it up.
This is
Let's wrap
funny.
it up.
Yeah,
Let's
This is
wrap it up.
funny.
Let's wrap it up.
I have been to the
Okay.
show thrice. I've never
Okay.
faced such a
Okay.
person. You know.
Let's wrap it
No,
up.
because I'm truthful.
Brijesh, please make your point.
There's
You
a
have
way-
said the first
there's-
truthful person on the
there's a
show.
thing about
That's
being
your
truthful.
problem.
There's
Well,
a- I think
well,
you've
extremely
never-
sorry about that.
I think you've
well-
never debated before.
Yes, this
Well-
is my first experience.
Exactly, that's
Unfortunately,
why-
I don't
well,
have
I
the
want-
opportunity to
you
speak
do
to
not
the
know how
other
it is
I
people.
want
done.
Mr.
That is why you
Phukan.
do
I
not
want
know
Mr.
how it is
Phukan to
done.
come in here. Please wrap up. What is the way forward going ahead so it's school education is affordable to the majority, be it private, be it public?
So for good quality education, I would reiterate the fact that we need to. This is a joint effort by all stakeholders: the teacher, the parent, the community, and the government. You know, it's a joint effort by all.
Stakeholders need to come together. Stakeholders need to be on the same page. Dr. Iqbal, very quickly, last words from you.
Yes, I would again say that we are not saying that the profit should not be a part of the interest of the private institutions, but of course, like, you know, we cannot sideline the fact completely that education is actually a commodity which caters to only a particular section of the society. We have to take into account that we are a society which is stratified when it comes to economics, and taking that fact into account, we have to regulate the kind of fees which are being imposed by private institutions.
Mr. Agarwal.
I remember a song by of a Raj Kapoor movie. नन्हे मुन्ने बच्चे तेरी मुट्ठी में क्या है? मुट्ठी में है तकदीर हमारी. Now, as education institutions, we have to look at their dreams, at the dreams of the child. Leaving aside the profit motive, yes, sustainability of the school is very important, but profit motive should not be part of the running the institution.
Profit motive should not be part. Brijesh, very quickly, last words, sum up.
I'll sum on it very fast. Yeah. Okay, my personal opinion is this: it's a service which I have entered into. Yeah. When we speak about business, making 1 rupee profit is also profit, and 1,000 is also profit. Don't discard and don't take business as a negative. Third thing, we differ with opinions, but private players need to be there. There
Absolutely.
should be regulation.
Absolutely. There's no denying to the
There
fact.
should be regulation. There
There's-
should be
there's-
competition.
yeah.
There will be pricing
Yeah,
difference.
yeah.
You cannot go and ask other A, B, C schools to have the same fee in private players because they have different infrastructure.
See,
they have different facilities.
there's no denying to it that that all schools should have the same fees. But of course, institutes have to keep it in mind that education cannot be business. It cannot be made into business. It cannot be made profit-driven. Sustainability, of course, is a factor they have to look into. If they are justifying what they're providing, they have every right to charge for it. No denying to that. On that note, we'll take your leave today. Do join us at the same time next week. Till then, stay safe, stay well.